A 50-year-old mystery was recently solved when a group of intellectuals decoded a message from the Zodiac Killer.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at 75 creepy mysteries that finally received closure.
But in 1937, a new written account is found, and it's a bombshell.
Number 75, The Boy in the Box.
Now we know. At a press conference today, detectives identified him as Joseph Augustus Zarelli.
Imagine losing your 4-year-old child and never receiving closure. On February 25, 1957, a hunter was checking his rabbit traps when he found a body in the Philadelphia woods. This body would become known as the Boy in the Box. The case became a media sensation, but despite the efforts of the police, no identification was ever made. In 1998, he was reburied in Ivy Hill Cemetery with a headstone reading America's Unknown Child. But a major break occurred in the early 2020s when a distant cousin uploaded their DNA to a public database. Genealogists were then able to trace the familial DNA and identified the boy as Joseph Zarelli. While a homicide investigation is currently in progress, it's still nice to have a name.
Scores of detectives worked the case over 6 decades, many of them no longer with us.
Number 74, The Rogers Family.
On the same day Hal Rogers expected his family to return home, the bodies of 3 unidentified women floated to the surface of Tampa Bay. Each had been bound with tape, weighted with a cinder block, and dumped into the bay, still alive.
In June of 1989, a particularly grisly murder terrified residents of Tampa Bay. On June 4th, 3 female bodies were found floating in the bay, all of them face down, all bound with rope, and all tied to a concrete block. The victims were eventually identified as Ohio native Joan Rogers and her 2 teenage daughters, Michelle and Christy. Despite a flurry of tips, the case went unsolved for over 3 years. Police found a brochure in Rogers' car with handwritten directions to a local boat dock. In an unprecedented move, police put a sample of this handwriting on billboards throughout the Tampa area. Amazingly, it was recognized by an old neighbor of aluminum contractor Oba Chandler, and Chandler was arrested for the murders.
Oba Chandler, convicted in 3 of the most brutal killings in Bay Area history. A mother and her 2 daughters murdered and dumped into the bay.
Number 73, The Harpers Ferry Remains.
An off-duty park ranger was heading out of Harpers Ferry Historic Park in Virginia at about 11 p.m. when something caught her eye. Near the trash bin was a large steamer trunk.
On May 13, 1996, a park ranger spotted a suspicious trunk at the entrance to Virginia's Harpers Ferry Park. The trunk was opened, and inside was the emaciated body of an old man. It was obvious that the man had met with foul play, not only because he was in a trunk, but because he had suffered from blunt force trauma and had high levels of tranquilizer in his system. The bizarre case would go unsolved for 7 years, but the John Doe's fingerprints eventually found a match in old military records, and he was identified as 75-year-old Jasper Watkins. With an identity, police then linked the crime to his girlfriend and career con woman Nancy Siegel, who killed Jasper as part of a financial scheme.
Who was the elderly man found in the steamer trunk? And who killed him? These key questions have mystified detectives for more than 5 years. According to experts, it is possible the man is one of thousands of elderly victims whose murders go undetected and whose killers go unpunished every year.
Number 72, The Murder of Britney Drexel.
Myrtle Beach is a hot spot when it comes to spring breaks and vacations. 17-year-old Britney Drexel, one of the millions to come here to enjoy the weather. That was more than 13 years ago.
In 2009, 17-year-old Britney Drexel vanished while on spring break in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Surveillance showed her leaving a hotel, then absolutely nothing else. She also had been texting with her boyfriend, but around 9:15 p.m., Drexel stopped responding. With no leads, the case went cold, haunting investigators and the public alike. For years, rumors swirled of trafficking, abduction, even gang involvement. But in 2022, a stunning breakthrough emerged. Raymond Moody, a convicted sex offender, confessed to abducting, assaulting, and murdering Drexel back in 2009, then burying her remains in a wooded area. He led police directly to her remains, finally bringing an end to a 13-year mystery.
That vehicle right there. We have proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Britney Drexel was in that vehicle at that time, at this time. driving that vehicle is Raymond Moody.
Number 71, the disappearance of Natalie Holloway.
Police had the security tapes ready from the lobby entrance where Uran said that he dropped Natalie off. And as we watched the tape and the night turned into daylight on the screen, Natalie never appeared.
In 2005, 18-year-old Natalie Holloway vanished while on a high school graduation trip to Aruba. Last seen leaving a nightclub with local man Joran van der Sloot, her disappearance sparked international headlines and became one of the most tantalizing true crime mysteries of the 21st century. Despite massive media coverage and relentless finger-pointing at van der Sloot, no trace of Holloway was ever found. He was even arrested multiple times in connection with her disappearance, but never charged due to a lack of evidence. The case went cold until 2023, when van der Sloot, already imprisoned in Peru for another murder, finally confessed to killing Holloway. He admitted to bludgeoning her after she refused his advances, then disposing of her body in the ocean.
Well, today I can tell you with certainty that after 18 years, Natalie's case is solved. As far as I'm concerned, it's over. It's over.
Number 70, Pompei. All the way back in 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius in central Italy erupted in a massive plume of ash and smoke, destroying the nearby city of Pompeii and literally wiping it off the map. Over time, the ash-covered ruins were completely forgotten in the cultural memory, and the site was not actively preserved or recorded in contemporary documents. This culminated in Pompeii's almost mythical reputation as one of the world's most enduring and mysterious lost cities. For over 1,000 years, it lay buried and lost, its only reference in the form of ancient texts. It wasn't until the mid-18th century that it was properly rediscovered and identified, and its ruins are now one of Italy's prime tourist attractions.
And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend. Legend became myth.
Number 69. Larry Eli Murillo Moncada.
He says his wife and another friend got up early that morning to find him, but they never picked up a trace, as if the earth had swallowed him whole.
In a hair-raising disappearance, 25-year-old Larry Eli Murillo Moncada of Council Bluffs fled his parents' house in the middle of a blizzard. He was barefoot and suffering from auditory hallucinations. His behavior resulted in a slew of different theories, each one creepier than the last. This was November 28, 2009. He was found nearly 10 years later on January 24, 2019, but not in the way you might think. Contractors working at a local supermarket were removing a cooler unit when they found the remains of Larry. He had worked at this supermarket, and for whatever reason, he fled there during the blizzard. Larry then climbed onto the structure and fell into the small gap between the freezer and the wall, where he eventually died.
Earlier this year, workers removing shelves and coolers from a closed supermarket in Council Bluffs, Iowa, discovered a body. The remains were recently identified as those of 25-year-old Larry Eli Murillo Moncada.
Number 68, Mary Toft's rabbits. It was 1726, and Englishwoman Mary Toft claimed to have given birth to rabbits. Yes, rabbits. Her bizarre story attracted national attention, and local surgeon John Howard reported the case to the court of King George I. Nathaniel Saint-André, the royal surgeon, investigated the case and confirmed her claims. So how did this woman give birth to rabbits? Well, she didn't. When Toft was taken to London for further observation, she failed to produce more rabbits under medical examination. And after intense questioning and even some threats of painful surgery, Toft confessed to inserting dead rabbits into herself to fake the births. The hoax humiliated the medical community and became a cautionary tale about gullibility and the limits of early medical science. Number 67, The Body in the Drum.
But this home in a quiet, upscale neighborhood in suburban New York held something more. In a steel drum, stored in a crawl space, was a secret that someone had hoped would last a lifetime.
On September 2, 1999, a horrifying discovery was made. Inside the crawl space of a New York house was a 55-gallon drum, and inside the drum were the mummified remains of a pregnant woman. Police traced the drum to a company called Melrose Plastics, which was co-owned by the owner of the house, Howard Elkins. An address book was also found in the barrel, leading police to Reina Marroquin, an employee at the factory who had been missing since 1969. Police interviewed Elkins, and he was uncooperative. He then took his own life shortly after questioning. Investigators then confirmed that the fetus inside Marroquin was the biological child of Elkins, and he likely murdered her after she told his wife of their affair.
A message possibly from Raina herself to Howard Elkins. It said, "Don't be mad. I told the truth."
Number 66. Where is the Titanic?
New exclusive photographs, by far the best yet, are in from the Titanic. For most of this century, that huge passenger liner has been a dead ship, resting in an ocean grave that, until these past few days, no one had seen.
It's hard to imagine now, but for many decades, the location of the Titanic was a complete mystery. We obviously knew that it had sunk, but we didn't know where it was, and many considered it lost forever in the depths of the North Atlantic. It's somewhat creepy knowing that a giant ship, the most famous ship in the world in its day, was out there somewhere rusting in the depths of the ocean. It wasn't until September 1985 that a team led by Dr. Robert Ballard found the ship using a robotic submersible named Argo and a state-of-the-art deep-sea camera system. The discovery reignited global interest in the Titanic and finally provided an answer to a global mystery that lasted 73 years.
These shoes were also on the Titanic that night. They belonged to Louise Pope, who was then 4 and on her way to America with her mother and father. Today, she looked at the photographs and remembered back.
Number 65. Adrienne Shelly.
He writes me these spontaneous poems.
Spontaneous poems?
Yes, they are poems that just occur to him right on the spot. Last night he said to me, "Dawn, your face is a brilliant moon in my empty room. Your love is like a beating drum. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum."
An accomplished actress and filmmaker, Adrienne Shelly is perhaps best known for writing, directing, and starring in the 2007 film Waitress. But the movie was released posthumously. On November 1st, 2006, Shelly was found dead in her Manhattan office. The scene strongly suggested that Shelly had taken her own life, and it was officially ruled as such. But her husband, Andy Ostroy, was unconvinced and begged police to investigate further. So they did, finding a boot print that matched the construction site downstairs. The crime was traced to a worker named Diego Pilco, who had followed Shelly back to her office and killed her in a failed robbery. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison and will be deported to Ecuador upon his release.
There you are.
Dawn, if I had a penny for everything I loved about you, I would have many pennies.
Number 64. Tom Hughes.
When the hospital dutifully attempted to contact the man's wife, they discovered that her name and phone number were bogus. So were the patient's social security number, address, occupation, and employer. Tom Hughes simply did not exist.
On the morning of February 11th, 1992, a man died from cardiac arrest at a Connecticut hospital. Following his death, investigators discovered that virtually everything about him was fake. His address, his social security number, even his name, Tom Hughes. They then theorized that Tom Hughes was a conman traveling the country, and rather than paying for hotels, he would stay at various hospitals under bogus ailments before fleeing. But without an identity, no one had anything to go on. The case was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, and some viewers recognized him as a man named Thomas White. White reportedly suffered from Munchausen syndrome, a condition where someone feigns being sick or injured for attention.
We know that Tom had been traveling from hospital to hospital for a year, 2 years, or possibly longer, and each time taking excessive amounts of painkillers. And we believe that could be a contributing cause of his death.
Number 63. The Missing Japanese Citizens.
Takashi Fujita hasn't seen his brother Susumu for 40 years, since the day he disappeared on his way to work. But 10 years ago, he heard reports of a man who fit his description, teaching Japanese in North Korea, and then obtained this picture that he believes is proof that Susumu was abducted.
Between 1977 and 1983, a number of Japanese citizens disappeared under suspicious circumstances, often near coastal areas. At the time, these disappearances were treated as isolated missing persons cases with little to no leads. The fact that they occurred near the coast suggested that they simply fell in the water and were carried away. But some people suspected foul play. They were right. Fast forward to the 1990s, when North Korean defectors began to speak publicly about secret abduction operations. And in a shocking admission in 2002, Kim Jong-il acknowledged that North Korea had kidnapped over a dozen Japanese citizens, and a number of survivors were returned to their families. Unfortunately, a number also died under North Korean captivity.
It is a story that could well be a spy movie, a thriller set right in the heart of the Cold War. But above all, it's a deep trauma for dozens of families.
Number 62, the KROQ call. Do you believe everything you hear on the radio? On June 13, 1990, Kevin Ryder and Gene Baxter of LA's KROQ hosted a call-in segment called Confess Your Crime. Most of these crimes were petty, but the fun stopped when one caller confessed to beating his girlfriend to death after finding her in bed with another man. The call sparked immediate shock, and the LA County Sheriff's Department launched a 10-month investigation into the call. Media outlets like Unsolved Mysteries also covered the case, leading to national attention. In the end, they found that Ryder and Baxter had conspired with a man named Doug the Slug Roberts, who phoned in as the mystery caller to generate interest in the show. Number 61, Charles Bothell V.
Tonight, a little boy is missing. Take a look at him. Charlie Bothell, father of the missing child. Is it true that you have been going door to door trying to get people to help you find your son?
In 2014, Charles Bothell IV and Monique Dillard Bothell reported their young son missing. The Detroit Police Department studiously searched for the young boy, and Bothell made the rounds on TV, even appearing on HLN's Nancy Grace. However, a surreal twist occurred during the segment. On live TV, Grace informed Bothell that his son had just been found, leading to a curious reaction from the father. You see, the police had found him in the basement of the house, behind a secret door hidden by a dresser. He was allegedly being abused and imprisoned by his own parents. While we can only speculate, most believe that Charles and Monique reported him missing so no one would inquire about his whereabouts and to divert suspicion from themselves.
Out to the father of the missing 12-year-old boy, Charlie. With me is his father, Charlie Bothell. Charlie, we're getting reports that your son has been found in your basement. Sir?
Number 60, the Miraculous Staircase.
So this is it? Absolutely. A miraculous staircase. I've heard so much about it. I've read so many theories about it, and it's amazing to actually be here to see it.
Found in the Loreto Chapel of Santa Fe, New Mexico, is the so-called Miraculous Staircase. Built in the late 1800s, the spiral staircase makes full 360-degree turns and seemingly stands without a central support column, something that has baffled architects and tourists for decades. According to legend, the nuns prayed for a solution after the chapel was built without a way to access the choir loft. A mysterious carpenter then appeared, built the staircase using only simple tools, and vanished without payment or recognition. A sublime case of divine intervention. But later studies suggest that it was crafted using a central stringer that is cleverly hidden in the woodwork, showcasing the rather mundane truth that it was simply masterful craftsmanship rather than supernatural intervention.
So why does it stand? Nobody knows. Where does wood come from? Nobody knows. And who built it? Nobody knows. And that's why it's still known, even to this day, as the Miraculous Staircase.
Number 59, Ivan Istochnikov. The lost cosmonauts are an enduring conspiracy theory, suggesting that the Soviet Union hid the deaths of early cosmonauts to avoid bad publicity. Ivan Istochnikov is a famous example, having supposedly vanished during the Soyuz 2 mission in 1968. The Soviets, realizing that he was gone, then scrubbed all mention of him from the public records. Strange elements, including altered photos, missing mission details, and cryptic transmissions only fueled the intrigue. The tale gained further traction in the 1990s when alleged artifacts and documents surfaced and allegedly confirmed the cover-up. However, it was later revealed to be an elaborate hoax by Catalan artist Joan Fontcuberta, who fabricated the entire story as a critique of propaganda and the manipulation of history. Number 58, Benjamin Kyle.
Rescue workers called him BK Doe because this man was found by a dumpster behind the Burger King restaurant in a suburb of Savannah. He was beaten, blind, and literally knocked senseless.
This was the name adopted by a man who was found naked, beaten, and sunburned outside a Burger King in Richmond Hill, Georgia on August 31, 2004. The man couldn't remember who he was, where he came from, or even his birth name, though he recalled that his birthday was August 29, 1948. Despite fingerprint searches, identity experts, and appearances on shows like Dr. Phil, no answers came for over a decade. But in 2015, a breakthrough came via the magic of genetic genealogy. DNA specialists confirmed the man's identity as William Burgess Powell from Lafayette, Indiana. Although the details of his life between the 1980s and 2004 remain unclear, that DNA detective work finally ended his status as America's most famous man without a name.
I didn't see a mirror until a week after the operation. Got up that morning and my vision had finally cleared up. I started to shave and I just couldn't believe how old I looked because I looked like an old man compared to how I felt. Geez, the gray hair, bags under the eyes. I didn't feel that old. I didn't think I should be that old.
Number 57, the Cottingly Fairies. Between 1917 and 1920, young cousins Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths shocked Britain with 5 photos purporting to show small winged creatures. They were quickly named the Cottingly Fairies, named after the village in which the cousins lived. These photos gripped the nation, as spiritualism and interest in the supernatural were at an all-time high following World War I. One passionate supporter of the photos' authenticity was Arthur Conan Doyle, a noted spiritualist and the author of the Sherlock Holmes stories. Despite widespread skepticism at the time, it wasn't until the 1980s that the cousins admitted to the hoax, the fairies being just cardboard cutouts they had taken from a children's book. Number 56, Old Three Toes. The legend of Old Three Toes dates back to 1948, when enormous three-toed footprints were discovered on Clearwater Beach, Florida. The Bigfoot of the South. Many people naturally assumed that a gigantic creature was making the tracks. And there were even some witness accounts of the monster, which was described as a furry log and even a giant 15-foot penguin. The latter theory was even bolstered by Ivan Sanderson, the founder of cryptozoology, lending it, funnily enough, some genuine credence. Sightings of the giant footprints ceased after the late 1950s, and it wasn't until 1988 that Tony Signorini of Clearwater admitted that he and a friend had made the footprints using custom-built iron shoes. Number 55, the murder of Jacob Wetterling.
Good evening. A stunning cold case confession today in Minnesota appears to bring a 27-year-old murder mystery that gripped the nation to an end, as a family that has lived with decades of anguish and uncertainty finally learned what happened to their little boy.
The abduction of Jacob Wetterling occurred on October 22, 1989, and would go on to have a profound impact on child safety laws across the United States. Jacob was biking with his friend and younger brother when a masked man confronted them and took Jacob at gunpoint before telling the other two to run home. Jacob was never seen alive again. His parents, Patty and Jerry, later helped establish a law named after Jacob which required states to establish sex offender registries. In 2015, police finally ID'd the masked man as one Danny Heinrich. Heinrich struck a plea deal with prosecutors, avoiding a murder charge in exchange for his confession and bringing them to Wetterling's body. He was ultimately sentenced to 20 years in prison on other charges.
After almost 27 years, Danny Heinrich was willing to talk, and we had to grab the moment.
Number 54, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry.
It's only with the heart that one can see clearly. What's essential is invisible to the eye.
A notable French writer, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry is best known for writing The Little Prince, which was first published in 1943. Just 1 year later, Saint-Exupéry disappeared while flying a reconnaissance mission in World War II, leaving Corsica to photograph German troops in southern France. Saint-Exupéry never returned, leading to decades of speculation. Some naturally thought he was shot down. Others thought he used the plane to fly away and live off his riches in peace and solitude. As no wreckage was ever found, anything seemed possible. But in 2000, parts of the plane were finally located off the coast of Marseille. And in 2008, German Luftwaffe veteran Horst Rippert claimed that he likely shot down Saint-Exupéry back in 1944. However, his claim remains disputed.
Then I haven't done you much good, have I? It's all been a waste of time.
Oh? Because you wasted so much time on me. You made me feel very important.
Number 53, the Chernobyl Explosion.
You're a nuclear engineer, so am I. So please tell me how an RBMK reactor core explodes. Not a meltdown, an explosion. I'd love to know.
I can't.
Believe it or not, the Chernobyl explosion was initially shrouded in mystery. Nuclear reactors, particularly the RBMK type used at Chernobyl, were not believed to be capable of exploding. So the incident stumped engineers, scientists, and physicists alike. Even those in the West were generally confused, as RBMK reactors were not used there and their details were classified by the USSR. As such, no one really knew why Chernobyl blew up, especially with such explosive force. However, experts eventually traced the disaster to operator error combined with numerous design flaws in the RBMK reactor, including a, quote, positive void coefficient and control rods dipped with graphite. This graphite increased reactivity and caused a runaway effect, resulting in a significant steam explosion.
For the same reason, we don't use properly enriched fuel in our cores. For the same reason, we are the only nation that builds water-cooled, graphite-moderated reactors with a positive void coefficient. It's cheaper.
Number 52, The Missing Children of France.
Gilles de Rais, Marshal of France. Formidable to men, fascinating to women, feared by all.
A French nobleman, Gilles de Rais was a close ally of Joan of Arc during the 100 Years' War, but he gradually withdrew from military life after Joan was executed and retired to his lavish estates in western France. Here, he was known to dabble in alchemy and occultism. It was also around this time that many peasant children began disappearing from the areas of Machecoul, Tiffauges, and Champtocé. All were areas near Gilles' estates. It's no coincidence. He was later arrested and tried for over 140 murders, with many eyewitnesses providing lurid testimony. While some continue to question his guilt, Gilles confessed to the killings and was executed in 1440, becoming one of the earliest documented serial killers in Western Europe. Number 51, Alisa Lamb.
The body of a Canadian woman who was missing in LA has now been found. Alisa Lamb disappeared 3 weeks ago.
Yesterday, her body was found inside a water tank on top of the hotel where she had been staying.
This story was made into way more than it was. After Alisa Lamb was reported missing, surveillance footage was released showing Lamb behaving oddly inside an elevator of the Cecil Hotel. Many speculated that she was hiding from someone or experiencing a supernatural encounter, as the Cecil is purported to be haunted. A few days later, Lamb's body was discovered in the rooftop water tank. The creepy story captivated the internet, but things slowly fell into place. It later became apparent that Lamb was not taking her bipolar medication, that the hotel rooftop was accessible via a fire escape, and that the tank lid was left open. Therefore, it's highly likely that Lamb suffered a manic episode and climbed into the tank herself.
She was traveling all by herself, arrived in Los Angeles. She was in Skid Row, no less. That was a stressor for her, probably. And then she wasn't taking her medications properly. It probably amplified the risk of her essentially having this manic episode.
Number 50, Lindy Chamberlain Creighton. It's possible you've heard the phrase, "a dingo ate my baby."
I have lost my fiancé, the poor baby.
Maybe the dingo ate your baby.
It's often used for humor, but unfortunately, the story is tragically genuine. In 1980, Lindy Chamberlain Creighton famously claimed that a dingo carried away her 9-week-old daughter Azaria while they were camping at Ayers Rock in Australia. No one believed her. Her story was widely mocked, resulting in the aforementioned jokes, and she was even convicted of murdering her daughter. What truly happened to young Azaria remained a mystery for 6 years. But in February 1986, the child's jacket was found buried near a dingo lair just outside Ayers Rock. Owing to the new evidence, Chamberlain Creighton was released from prison, and her life sentence was remitted.
I think that the jury, like the rest of us, knew that she was guilty. Quite wrong, but that was the fact. We couldn't shake off that feeling.
Number 49, Weeping Statues.
There's a statue of the Virgin Mary that appears to be crying tears inside a Reading shop.
9 News reporter Janelle Walton was inside the shop. Janelle, what did you see?
You've probably seen it on the news or in a movie. A religious statue is weeping, and usually some kind of red liquid just to make it that much creepier. This phenomenon is often associated with miracles, as, a statue should not be crying. However, there are many non-religious reasons why a statue might be crying. In some cases, the water is nothing but condensation, and if the statue is made of porous materials, moisture can seep through and resemble tears. There also might be psychological perceptions at play, or just good old-fashioned tampering for the sake of fame and attention. Even the Catholic Church ignores weeping statues for the most part, and have called out a number of examples as hoaxes.
You're imagining a 3 of a sword, and how do you explain that?
Sleep deprivation? Parano?
Delusional personality disorder.
Number 48, the Ariel Castro kidnappings.
But family members told ABC News overnight they are in a state of shock and had no idea anyone was living in the home with him. Neighbors say Castro, a father of 3, was a loner who occasionally parked his bus on the street, but usually kept to himself.
Between 2002 and 2004, 3 young women disappeared from the streets of Cleveland. They were Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus. Their whereabouts remained unknown for approximately 10 years. It was one of the most tantalizing true crime cases in the city's history, with many people theorizing about their disappearance. Answers were finally provided on May 6, 2013, when a man named Charles Ramsey heard cries for help coming from 2207 Seymour Avenue. He helped free Amanda Berry, and together, they called 911. When police arrived, they also found and rescued both Knight and DeJesus. The house belonged to a man named Ariel Castro, who had kidnapped the women and kept them imprisoned for a decade, subjecting them to horrific abuse.
And you had no indication that there was anything going on?
Bro, not a clue that girl was in that house or anybody else was in there against their will.
Number 47, the trunk bones.
Sometimes from the most unlikely elements comes a tantalizing mystery and confirmation that the truth is stranger than fiction. The mystery might start, say, with this broken-down footlocker. Who can guess what the old trunk might contain?
Back in 1987, a man named John David Morris offered a shed to Newell Sessions, telling him that he could have it in exchange for moving it off his property. So Sessions took the shed to his home in Thermopolis, Wyoming, and there it sat for a number of years. In 1992, Sessions decided to open a trunk that had been sitting in the shed, and inside he found a human skeleton. Authorities found that the mystery person had been murdered. It wasn't until 2017 that the bones were positively identified as belonging to Joseph Mulvaney, a World War II veteran who disappeared in 1963. Mulvaney was Morris's stepfather.
I don't believe that Gabby was the person that caused the death to this person, but my thoughts have always been that he has knowledge of who the person in the trunk is or where they came from.
Number 46, the body in room 348.
I got to finally address my thoughts to this man who, had he simply come forward, this would have been a completely different, quote, accident.
On September 15, 2010, police found 55-year-old Greg Flanagan dead in his Beaumont hotel room. There was no sign of forced entry, and Flanagan's large stack of cash was undisturbed, which ruled out foul play. Yet when Flanagan was taken to the medical examiner, they found severe internal damage caused by blunt force trauma. So how did Flanagan die and who attacked him? The answer is almost ludicrous. Investigators found a tiny hole in the wall of Flanagan's room, and from there the story unraveled. A man named Lance Mueller was staying in the adjacent room and was handling his small handgun when it accidentally discharged, sending the bullet through the wall and into Flanagan's chest. It was a terrible accident, and Mueller was given 10 years in prison for manslaughter.
And when they saw the body being taken out of the room, there was ever any doubt at that point, did I hurt somebody? To still not have the moral capacity to come forward, that's scary to me that people walk around like that.
Number 45, the McStay family murders.
In your gut, what do you think happened?
I have absolutely no clue.
Back in February of 2010, the McStay family was officially declared missing. They were not in contact with any family members, and when Joseph McStay's brother climbed into their Fallbrook house, he found it empty. There was no sign of foul play, and the family's dogs were still alive in the backyard. 3 long years elapsed with no further word until November 11, 2013, when a motorcyclist found the buried remains of the McStay family in the Mojave Desert. It was just one mystery after another. That is, until the arrest of one Charles Merritt. Merritt was a business associate of Joseph McStay, and investigators found that he murdered Joseph and his family in order to steal money from his business account.
Now he sees a very different Chase Merritt.
To me, it looked like a broken man. He knew he was done.
Number 44, the Flannon Isles Lighthouse.
Should pale death with treble dread make the ocean caves our bed. God, who hears the surges roll, deign to save our suppliant soul.
Everyone loves a creepy lighthouse story, and the Flannon Isles disappearance has to be one of the best. In December of 1900, a passing ship noticed that the light on Flannon Isles was out and went to investigate. None of the lighthouse keepers was present, and their living quarters were orderly. Everything was in place, and there was even an uneaten meal on the table. There was also a considerable amount of destruction on the west landing, including a broken box of equipment and bent iron railings. It's certainly a creepy sight, but with a rather mundane explanation. It's now widely believed that the men ran out to secure their equipment in a storm and were washed away by a destructive rogue wave.
Northeasterly wind will come soon, a blowing like Gabriel's horn. Best board up them signal-house windows. Aye, sir.
Number 43, the Bermuda Triangle.
Vast, ominous, mythical. The Bermuda Triangle, also known as the Devil's Triangle, one of the greatest mysteries of our time.
Everyone knows of the mythical Bermuda Triangle. Found between Bermuda, Puerto Rico, and the Florida coast, the triangle is said to be a hotspot of paranormal activity, prone to swallowing ships and planes and leaving their fates unknown. It's one of the most enduring mysteries of American pop culture. Only there isn't really a mystery, and this has been known since at least the mid-70s. That's when Larry Cush published the Bermuda Triangle Mystery Solved, and posited that the triangle does not have a higher incident rate than any other part of the ocean. Furthermore, many of the original stories were either highly exaggerated or just outright made up. It's just a fun story and nothing more.
Using the terminology of today, you would call the triangle.
Well, I mean, this is the oldest fake news story in the world. I mean, this has been around for a long time, and, people build on it.
Number 42, Lady of the Dunes.
We are standing here today to announce that after nearly a half-century of investigative efforts, we have identified the oldest unidentified homicide victim in Massachusetts, known as the Lady of the Dunes.
On July 26, 1974, a 12-year-old girl stumbled upon a decomposing body in the sand dunes of Race Point Beach in Provincetown, Massachusetts. The body showed severe damage, indicating that the woman had been brutally murdered. Despite an extensive investigation, the police were unable to identify the woman, and she became known as the Lady of the Dunes. And that's how she stayed for nearly 50 years, until 2022, when an FBI field office in Boston announced a positive development. DNA had been taken from the woman's remains, and they matched one Ruth Marie Terry. Police now believe that Terry was murdered by her husband, Guy Moldavan, who died in 2002 and escaped justice for Terry's death.
I can't wait to get down to her grave in Provincetown myself and just, I don't know what'll happen. I'll probably cry, and I'll just probably say, Ruth, we know who you are. It happened.
Number 41, BTK.
And it shows here that was last saved by Dennis. So somehow a Dennis who was affiliated with the church or the library was somehow involved with this document.
Some serial killers are brought down thanks to clever police work, and some are brought down through sheer hubris. BTK terrorized the greater Wichita area between 1974 and 1991, murdering at least 10 individuals and taunting the police with threatening letters. Despite their best efforts, police were unable to identify BTK, and the case remained a mystery for decades. But in 2004, BTK once again started corresponding with the media and police, taunting them with decades-old murder cases. He ultimately sent a floppy disk to the Wichita station KSAS-TV, and police used metadata from the disk to trace its sender. And with this, Dennis Rader was caught and identified as BTK. He was arrested in 2005, 31 years after murdering his first victim.
On the table before them, the computer disk traced back to Rader.
Anyway, you can get out the DNA, right? You can't get out your DNA unless you've had a total blood transfer and lost every organ. It's there.
He knew that DNA was, he had studied enough that he knew that that was going to be it.
Number 40, the surgeon's photograph.
1934. The first photo of the supposed Loch Ness Monster incites public frenzy and a torrent of tourists looking for Nessie.
It's one of the most famous photographs in cryptozoology, a massive dinosaur-like head emerging from Scotland's Loch Ness. The photo has entranced the public ever since its publication in 1934, with many believing it to be verifiable proof of the elusive Loch Ness Monster. But even for those who didn't believe in the mythical monster, a lingering question still remained. What exactly was this? It wasn't until the 1990s that we got firm answers. In 1991, a man named Christian Sperling admitted that the photo was a hoax, having built the monster using a toy submarine and wood putty. He then conspired with a number of others in order to fool the Daily Mail into publishing a bogus story, which it famously did.
So using plastic, wood, and a toy submarine, they create this model of a creature with a long neck and a small head.
Number 39, the Sowway Spaceman.
A picture is said to be worth 1,000 words. But what happens when something in the picture can't be explained?
Chances are that you've seen this photo on your many adventures around the internet. A little girl looks into the camera, while behind her head emerges a creepy figure that looks like an astronaut. The photographer, Jim Templeton, claims that no one but him, his daughter, and his wife were in the immediate vicinity. Did you pick up on that clue? Yep, this supposed spaceman is just Templeton's wife. It's likely that Templeton didn't see her through the viewfinder, as that make of camera obscured about 30% of the image. Her pale blue dress was then overexposed, appearing as white in the photograph. Add her dark bobbed hair, and you have a figure that looks suspiciously like an astronaut.
Can we solve a 50-year-old mystery? So here is our attempt to recreate the phenomenon of the Sowway Spaceman. Proof enough? You decide.
Number 38, Charlie No Face. A legend spread around the Pittsburgh area throughout the 1970s and 80s, with people telling of a man without a face who wandered the streets at night. This man was Charlie No Face. For many, this was nothing but a mystery, a creepy urban legend meant to scare those braving the nighttime dark. Unfortunately, and to the surprise of many locals, the story was real. Charlie No Face was actually a man named Raymond Robinson, who was tragically disfigured in a childhood accident. Unwilling to be seen in public, he would spend his days at home before going for walks at night. Some would see him on his walks and spread the story, resulting in an urban legend rooted in truth. Number 37, the Dog Bridge.
In 1995, he is walking his 5-year-old Labrador, Drift.
It was a normal Sunday afternoon, beautiful day, and it just leapt right over the bridge.
Many people have heard of the famous Dog Bridge in Scotland, off of which dozens of pups have supposedly jumped to their deaths. The stories claim that dogs will act normally until they get on the bridge, whereupon they fly into a frenzy and launch themselves off the structure to the rocky gorge below. Many people believe that the bridge is cursed and that some kind of supernatural phenomenon is behind it. Alas, there is a real explanation. A number of professional investigations have found that the dogs are drawn to the scent of mammals, either in the gorge below or nesting in the side of the structure. They get excited, hop up to investigate, and topple off the tapered wall of the bridge.
They've no concept of what's on the other side. They can't see the drop. So basically, they're going from level ground to a 60-foot drop. And it's only when they get to the other side that they realize what's happened to them.
Number 36, the Lake Nyos disaster.
Lake Nyos looks as stunning as ever. It's hard to imagine that this breathtaking landscape could cause so many deaths. Yet it did, 30 years ago.
Something very weird happened at Cameroon's Lake Nyos on August 21st, 1986. It suddenly erupted, sending an enormous cloud shooting into the air at 60 miles per hour. The water in the lake turned red while the cloud fell to the ground, suffocating nearby villages and killing 1,746 people. The event seems almost biblical. What actually happened was the very rare limnic eruption, which is when a huge amount of carbon dioxide explodes from the bottom of a deep lake. The deep iron-rich water rose to the surface and was oxidized, turning it red, and the cloud of expelled carbon dioxide fell to the ground as CO2 is heavier than oxygen. Unfortunately, it suffocated many who lay in its path.
It was at night. I was asleep with my children. I heard an explosion but didn't make much of it. When I woke up the next morning, I discovered some of my children were dead. Those who were still alive would cough out some powdery substance. I was also affected.
Number 35, the Windsor Hum.
I've been listening to it for a while. It gets very aggravating. I'm outside quite a bit because I'm a smoker and I listen to it constantly.
There are a weird number of hums heard throughout the world, each described as a persistent and irritating whine. One of the most notable examples was found in Windsor, Ontario. The sound was described by many as a low droning vibration, and it was loud enough that one evening in 2012, over 20,000 people reported it to the local police. Alas, the mystery was finally solved in 2020, and thousands of annoyed residents could finally rest easy. Literally, the sound was sourced to nearby Zug Island, a heavily industrialized area just off Detroit. and specifically the blast furnaces operated by U.S. Steel. When these furnaces were deactivated in April of that year, the sound ceased and peace was restored.
To hear the folks at United States Steel tell it, this is not permanent. No mothballs, no shuttering of a plant. They're calling it an indefinite idling as they try and make their operation more efficient.
Number 34, Crocker Land.
Did he tell you what we're supposed to do?
I did.
Well?
He wants us to move the island.
The 19th and 20th centuries were filled with brilliant adventures into the Earth's poles, but you probably haven't heard of the Crocker Land expedition. American explorer and Navy officer Robert E. Peary described an enormous mountainous land that he could see from Ellesmere Island in the Canadian Arctic. He named it Crocker Land after his financial backer George Crocker, and an expedition set out to find and map it. Yet they found no such island, despite its supposedly immense size. It simply didn't exist. What a tantalizing mystery. No, seriously, it didn't exist. As we later learned through his personal diary, Peary made the whole thing up, probably to secure more funding from an excited Crocker.
Where's the island? Where's the island?
Number 33, J.C. Dugard.
And they have lived with the questions, the rumors that have swirled ever since.
I heard she was buried around here, and I heard she wasn't. You know, my neighbor up the street said he saw her get snagged, so.
On June 10, 1991, 11-year-old J.C. Dugard was kidnapped in Myers, California while walking to school. Numerous people witnessed the abduction, but the trail quickly went cold, and what ultimately happened to the abducted girl remained a painful question for many in the community. But an answer was finally provided in August 2009 when a man named Philip Garrido brought his daughters to the University of California, Berkeley. The odd behavior of the girls attracted attention, and Garrido was ordered to take them to a parole officer. He brought with him the girls' mother, who called herself Alisa. Investigators were quickly able to deduce that Alisa was actually a grown J.C. Dugard, who, through continuous acts of abuse, had given birth to the two girls.
This is the place where J.C. was held prisoner for 18 years, and where police say she was forced to raise the two children she had with the kidnapper.
Number 32, the Salish Sea Discoveries.
It is becoming all too common in BC. Another foot has washed up on shore, this time in Richmond, and it looks like a woman's left foot in a New Balance running shoe.
The western coast of North America is the site of one of the most gruesome mysteries in modern history. Beginning in the summer of 2007, a number of human feet, often still inside their shoes, have washed ashore in British Columbia, Tacoma, and Seattle. A number of macabre theories have been put forth, including the possibility of a serial killer. But the reality is far more mundane. People die at sea, often in tragic boating accidents, and their bodies decompose in the water. As this happens, the extremities, like hands and feet, break away from the body. And because the feet are trapped inside the shoes, they are mostly saved from decomposition and buoyed, allowing them to float to shore in the currents.
Shoes and feet washing up. There's been a dozen of them or so, and you hear about them over the years, and it's just kind of a unique local phenomenon.
Number 31, Roswell.
After his report becomes publicized, it inspires other people to report that they have also seen bizarre phenomena in the skies. And we are in the midst of flying saucer fever.
Behold, a historic event that gave rise to a phenomenon. The UFO craze started in the summer of 1947 when something crashed in the New Mexico desert. The military's response raised a few eyebrows, especially when they changed their explanation from a flying disc to a weather balloon. It wasn't until 1980 that the UFO conspiracy truly took hold thanks to the seminal book, The Roswell Incident. But the mystery was answered in 1994 when the U.S. Air Force published a report claiming that the debris was from a top-secret military balloon designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests. The report admits they didn't want this information released, so they made up the cover story about the weather balloon. Of course, some people still aren't convinced.
And when you put all that stuff together and spin it, you find that it fits perfectly with many of the occurrences in Roswell during that era.
Number 30, the Long Island serial killer. It was one of the most absorbing mysteries of the early 21st century. Who killed all those women in New York? The Long Island serial killer murdered at least 11 victims since the early 1990s and disposed of most of their bodies throughout the Gilgo Beach area.
4 of them now officially listed as victims of this serial killer that's been dubbed the Long Island Ripper.
The The killings remained a mystery until the summer of 2023, when a 59-year-old architect named Rex Andrew Hewerman was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder.
This is the man police have taken into custody.
DNA has officially linked Hewerman to many of the victims. As of 2024, he has been charged with 7 of the murders and is currently pleading not guilty.
His court-appointed attorney entering a not guilty plea on his behalf.
Number 29, the burial place of Richard III. Mysterious deaths will always be intriguing and a little creepy, especially when they involve someone as famous as Richard III. The King of England was killed at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485, making him the final English king to die in battle.
Conducted with conspicuous bravery, Richard became the last King of England to die on the battlefield.
And then we just sort of forgot where he was. Oops. Richard's body was buried in the Greyfriars Church in Leicester, but the tomb was lost and erased from history when the church was demolished in 1536. Time passed on, a king was lost, and the old church grounds were turned into a parking lot. But it was in this parking lot that Richard was finally found in 2012, 476 years after his tomb was turned to rubble. Number 28, the case of Margie Jelovic. While working at her mother's Indiana tavern, Margie Jelovic met a biker named Randy Yeager, who rode with a gang called the Outlaws.
What's your name? I haven't seen you here before.
My name's Margie.
Margie, how do you do? My name's Randy.
The gang was reportedly incredibly violent and under numerous investigations for the likes of racketeering, robberies, and even various bombings and murders. Jelovic devoted herself to and defended Yeager, becoming paranoid that the police were after them. In September of 1997, she up and vanished.
Wherever she is gone, she has not traveled there in her car. Her family is as perplexed as they are worried.
Her asthma inhaler was left behind, suggesting that she had been taken against her will. But that was not the case. It wasn't until October of 2014 that Jelovic and Yeager were found living together in Mexico. Unfortunately, Jelovic was killed while driving away from the police. Yeager was caught and given a 15-year prison sentence.
Yeager has been on the run since 1997.
Number 27, the disappearance of Stardust. Airplanes simply up and disappearing will always be a disturbing subject. A famous case occurred on August 2, 1947, when a plane named Stardust vanished while flying from Argentina to Chile.
Then the plane sent one final mysterious Morse code message. Stendek.
The plane never arrived at the airport, and a search and rescue operation ended in failure when they couldn't locate the aircraft. It was simply gone.
After that, nothing more was heard from the plane.
And it would remain missing for over 5 decades. After years of conspiracy theories, the wreck of Stardust was found by 2 mountaineers in Mount Tupungato in the late 90s. Further study seemed to show that the pilots likely became mistaken about their location, having encountered a jet stream, and accidentally flew into the cloud-obscured mountain. The crash then started an avalanche, which buried the plane and prevented rescuers from finding it.
After the devastating crash, Stardust was buried within seconds.
Number 26, young Monica Bonilla. The marriage of Guillermo and Rosemary Bonilla began to collapse after the murder of John Lennon in 1980. Not long after, Guillermo Bonilla began dressing and acting like Lennon, telling Rosemary that he was the reincarnated musician. On September 22, 1982, Rosemary finished work and came home to find nothing in it anymore, including furniture, belongings, Guillermo, and their young daughter Monica. Years later, an episode of Unsolved Mysteries told of the disappearance of one Nylene Marshall.
For over 7 years, Nylene's family has been trapped by the agony of not knowing what happened to her.
A school official in Vancouver contacted the producers, claiming that a student named Mary Ann Kelly may be the missing Marshall. The FBI investigated Kelly and discovered that she was not Nylene Marshall, but the also missing Monica Bonilla instead. She was safely returned to her mother, who called the bizarre coincidence God's will. Number 25, the Mary Celeste. It's probably the most famous ghost ship in North American history. On December 4, 1872, the Mary Celeste was found floating and abandoned off Western Europe. The boat was in fair condition, while both its cargo and the crew's belongings were mostly accounted for.
10 persons, the captain, his family, and crew, had vanished without trace.
While we're still not 100% sure what happened, many commentators believe that something very, very worrying had to have occurred.
The men found working charts, but not the ship's papers, nor her navigational instruments or maps.
The explosive theory is one of the most popularly accepted ones, carrying over 1,700 barrels of alcohol. It's likely that the barrels started seeping, causing either an intense smell of gas or a small pressure wave explosion that would have left behind no scorching or soot. Either way, it's likely that the captain ordered the crew into the yawl and, in a panic, failed to secure it to the boat. The ship then drifted away, leaving the men to die on the open ocean.
Now, with the help of an international team of experts, the true story of the Mary Celeste can finally be told.
Number 24, the Freeman Arson. At 5:30 a.m. on the morning of December 30th, 1999, police were notified of a fire at the house of Danny and Kathy Freeman.
It's a cold, dark morning when the volunteer fire department is called to extinguish a devastating trailer fire.
Inside, they found the corpses of Kathy and Danny, both of whom had been shot. Missing was the Freemans' teenage daughter Ashley and Ashley's friend Laura Bible, who was sleeping over that night. The crime wasn't solved for nearly 20 years.
The girls literally fell off the face of the earth. There is no clothes, no phone calls, nothing.
In April of 2018, 66-year-old Ronnie Busick was arrested and charged with 4 counts of murder, including those of Bible and Ashley Freeman. It's believed that Busick and 2 others, Warren Welch and David Pennington, both dead, killed the Freemans, torched their house, and kidnapped the teens. Busick pled guilty and served just 38 months of his 10-year sentence, thanks to, quote, good behavior.
He was sentenced to 10 years in prison and Friday morning was released.
Number 23. A Zodiac Cipher is finally cracked. The story of the Zodiac Killer continues to intrigue owing to his elusive nature and the bizarre ciphers he produced. The Zodiac made 4 of these cryptograms, and before 2020, only 1 had been solved. The first was quickly cracked back in 1969, but for the next several decades, the remaining 3 continued to stump even the most professional codebreakers. That is, until December 2020, when another cipher was solved by private citizens. Dubbed Z340, the puzzle was originally sent on November 8, 1969, and references the Zodiac's welcoming of death.
It reads in part, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me."
He claims that his new life will be an easy one in paradise, and that he is not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send him to paradise all the sooner.
There are still 2 remaining ciphers from Zodiac that have yet to be decoded.
Number 22, the Lost Roanoke Colony. One of America's biggest mysteries is also one of its simplest. A number of colonists settled in what's now North Carolina in 1585. This was known as the Roanoke Colony. Explorer John White left the colony in 1587, meaning to get more supplies in England.
White soon sailed back to England for much-needed supplies, but when he returned, he found the settlement eerily abandoned.
When he finally returned in 1590, having been delayed by war, the colony was gone, the only clue being the word Croatoan carved into the palisade. White deduced, likely correctly, that the colonists left for nearby Croatoan Island. While we don't know for sure, there is tons of circumstantial evidence showing that it's most likely the colonists moved out and assimilated with the local tribes, having lost hope of White's return.
They eventually make it to safety after a 500-mile journey to Georgia.
Indeed, the present-day Hatteras tribe considers themselves descendants of the lost Europeans.
Perhaps the colonists survived, and together with the Croatoan tribe, went on to thrive in their adoptive land.
Number 21. Dyatlov Pass. Avalanches seem to account for many mysteries. The 1959 Dyatlov Pass One has long been a famous one, with 9 hikers fleeing the safety of their tent in the dead of night and dying under puzzling conditions. Their deaths were initially attributed to a, quote, compelling natural force, and questions abounded for many decades.
And in the end, investigators are left with no explanation as to what happened.
But advancements in technology led to a sound answer in 2020, avalanche. It's likely the hikers heard the rumblings of an imminent avalanche and fled the tent in a panic. Further study suggests some got hit by a slab avalanche, hence their devastating physical injuries, and the rest got lost in the dark and passed on through hypothermia. This answer has been supported by numerous independent bodies, all of whom agree that it's the most likely scenario.
Being in this location really brought home to me just how terrifying it was for them.
Number 20. The fate of the Franklin expedition.
I will not lose another man, Francis. We may lose all our men.
For centuries, explorers sought out a northwest passage between the Atlantic and Pacific through the Arctic Ocean, but their expeditions often ended in disaster.
It's the ice, Georgie. It's only the ice.
One of the most famous was British Royal Navy officer John Franklin's in 1845. His expedition's ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, never returned. Search parties recovered only artifacts and human remains. With the passing of time, however, we've pieced together the full story. The ships got trapped in pack ice, and the crew died from starvation, hypothermia, and disease. The sunken Erebus and Terror were finally found in 2014 and 2016, respectively. Number 19, Pierre April.
Some lumps of things come back that are not especially pleasant.
Imagine waking up in a ditch with only $17 in your pocket and no idea who you are or where you came from. That's what happened to amnesiac Pierre April in May 1992. April was found wandering the streets of San Diego and taken to a shelter. Pieces of his life started coming back to him, including faces and talents, but nothing came of his attempts to connect to his past life. In September, his case was featured on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries.
I was so sure this city would bring everything back, and it did not.
This episode was seen by an old colleague of April's named Carol. She phoned the show's tip line and told them all they needed to know. April was happily reunited with his family, and his memory has since recovered.
It is strange to be told who you are and what you did. I'm someone again.
Number 18, Umbrella Man. The assassination of John F. Kennedy in November 1963 prompted countless conspiracy theories. Some of the more interesting ones were about a figure spotted in photos and films of the event, who had been brandishing an umbrella despite the sunny weather.
In all of Dallas, there appears to be exactly one person standing under an open black umbrella.
Could he have been complicit in the assassination? He remained a mystery for 15 years, until 1978, when Louis Stephen Witt came forth. Witt identified himself as the Umbrella Man and said that the umbrella was meant as a symbolic protest against Kennedy. An umbrella had been the trademark accessory of British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, infamous for initially appeasing the Nazi Party.
It was a reference to Neville Chamberlain's umbrella.
And with that, one of the world's most tantalizing mysteries fizzled out with a disappointing answer.
Oh, I see. Then everything is wrapped up in a neat little package. Really, I mean that.
Number 17, the Paulding Light of Michigan. Speaking of horribly disappointing answers, let's discuss the Paulding Light.
We came out here because somebody had heard about it. We were just sitting around a night, and some local people that we knew had heard about this.
Paulding is a small community in western Michigan that houses a famous piece of folklore.
One popular legend says that the light is produced by the wayward spirit of a train conductor killed when his locomotive derailed.
Just outside of town, onlookers can spot a bright light flashing on and off at the end of a valley. The people of Paulding have many supernatural explanations for this light, including ghosts. One particularly creepy story claims that it's a grandparent looking for their lost grandchild with a flickering lantern. But the truth is far more boring. Turns out it's actually just headlights from a nearby highway. So, yeah, bummer.
Had people standing here having the pictures of the vehicles on the screen of the computer, and it's like, well, that's it, and they still won't believe it.
Number 16, the Somerton Man. One of Australia's enduring mysteries may have been finally solved in the summer of 2022. On December 1st, 1948, a body was found in Adelaide's Somerton Park. He was wearing American clothes embroidered with the name Keen. Inside his pocket was a scrap of paper reading Tamam Shud, Persian for is finished. The book that this paper was torn from was eventually located, and investigators found cryptic text written on the cover.
We looked for people with no date of death on that tree, and there was one that stood out.
In July 2022, DNA helped identify the man as Carl Webb. It's also now believed that the cryptic text found in the book were the names of horses, as Webb often gambled on horse racing. And finally, the clothes were likely passed down from his nephew, who once lived in the United States. Number 15, the Bloop. Many people have a fear of the deep ocean, and it's because of things like this. The bloop was a very loud underwater noise captured in 1997 by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It was so loud that it was detected by sensors over 3,000 miles away. It doesn't sound like much at normal speed, but it takes on its signature bloop noise when sped up. Believers in Cthulhu immediately went to giant underwater monster, but once again, the truth is more mundane. It wasn't a massive creature, but an ice quake as a result of glacial movements. Man, science can't let us have any fun. Number 14, Anastasia's fate.
In the grave, there was supposed to be 11 bodies, but only 9 were there.
On July 17, 1918, far-left revolutionaries, the Bolsheviks, murdered the Russian Imperial Romanov family. In the aftermath, rumors circulated that Grand Duchess Anastasia, who was 17, had somehow escaped and survived. Her body could not be located, and several people came forward claiming to be the lost Anastasia. However, these stories turned out to be outright lies or the result of mental health issues, as was the case with famous imposter Anna Anderson. The long-standing rumor was officially put to rest when the remains of the royal family were identified with DNA. Grand Duchess Anastasia was among them, proving that she died with the rest of the Romanovs. Number 13, Lady Be Good. The World War II bomber Lady Be Good was used to conduct a raid on Naples on April 4, 1943. However, it disappeared on its way back to Libya, and both the plane and its crew were considered lost. No one knew what happened, and the plane was not recovered. That is until 1958, when the crashed aircraft was spotted in the Libyan desert. This raised even more questions, as the plane was remarkably preserved and showed no signs of the crew.
Where's the pilot? I don't understand! Where's the crew? Hey!
All the questions were subsequently answered after an investigation. The pilots had gotten lost in a sandstorm and ejected from the craft when it ran out of fuel. The plane crashed, and the men died while walking through the desert. Number 12, Sailing Stones. It's one of the most bizarre sights that can be seen in nature. A lone rock stands in the middle of the desert. A massive trail snakes behind it, as if it's been pushed across the ground. However, no footsteps and no signs of animal activity can be found. These stones are especially notable in the racetrack playa of California's Death Valley.
All these funny parallel trails that are clearly there's some sort of common force involved.
So just what the heck is going on with these rocks? The phenomenon has tantalized researchers for decades, but the mystery has only recently been cracked. The valley floor produces a very thin layer of ice, and the rocks slide across these sheets when the ice starts to melt. The movement leaves indentations in the ground, resulting in their signature trails. Number 11, the death of Junlin.
His mother still worried about him living in a big foreign city, so he'd walk the streets with his cell phone and stream images back to her. His message to her in their daily conversations was always the same. Don't worry, he told her, I'm safe.
One of the most notorious videos in the history of the internet was uploaded on May 25, 2012. Titled One Lunatic, One Ice Pick, it depicts an Asian male getting killed and dismembered by an unidentified figure.
So you could see that clearly the murder happened on the bed.
Various body parts were then sent to schools and federal offices across Canada, and these remains were linked to the man who was killed in the video. The case made international headlines and remained a mystery for several days. But investigators quickly traced the grisly homicide to a man named Luca Magnotta, who had already fled the country. An international manhunt ensued, and Magnotta was finally captured in Berlin on June 4th, about a week and a half after uploading the infamous video.
Luca Magnotta, who's been the focus of an international manhunt since fleeing Canada last week, was arrested by police at an internet
will eventually face Canada's justice system. He's expected to go before a judge tomorrow.
Number 10, the face on Mars.
Was there once an advanced civilization on Mars? Some of the features on the planet's surface definitely make you wonder.
This is one of the most popular space images of all time. Taken by the Viking orbiters back in the mid-70s, the picture depicts the Cydonia region of Mars. People immediately noticed that one of the features bore a striking resemblance to a human face, or maybe one of those old-school hockey masks.
Everything is proportional. If the face is 1.5 miles, 2 miles long, the eyes 1/4 mile, nose about 1/2 mile. So it's not small structure, it's very large structure.
Speculation immediately flew to aliens or some kind of human habitation on the supposedly barren planet. But nah, the answer is much more boring. Turns out this was just an optical illusion, the result of lighting, angle, and a low-resolution picture. More recent and much better photos have been taken of the same location, and they reveal nothing but a boring hill with face-like characteristics. Number 9. The construction of the pyramids. The Giza pyramids are arguably the most famous landmarks in the world. They continue to stand tall literally after thousands of years. Their construction has baffled people for millennia, leading some to suggest that aliens must have been involved. After all, humans couldn't possibly drag and lift those stones into place, right? Well, yes, they could. Researchers believe that workers loaded the blocks onto sledges and wet the sand to make them easier to drag. They raised the blocks using ramps and levering techniques. This took tens of thousands of people decades to complete. But hey, no one said building a wonder of the world was easy. Number 8. The Tunguska event. In the early morning of June 30th, 1908, a remote area of Russia was hit with a massive and mysterious blast.
In 1 hour, the explosion and the great fire that followed destroy a region of forest the size of Greater London.
People who observed that thought the end of the world had come, Judgment Day, divine intervention.
This blast completely leveled over 800 square miles of forest and flattened 80 million trees. No source could be found for the explosion, so no one knew what exactly happened.
It's an event and it's a mystery that would take 105 years of research before we could finally write the words. The end.
Thousands of scientific papers have been written about the incident, and the area has been studied for decades, with many trying to crack the bizarre case. It is now generally agreed that a 200-foot meteor traveling 60,000 miles per hour exploded in midair over the area, resulting in what's called a meteor airburst. This airburst then leveled everything below the meteor's detonation site.
If it was a meteorite and the Earth had turned a bit further, it would have destroyed St. Petersburg. An hour later, it would have destroyed Helsinki. 1 hour later, Stockholm, and after that, Oslo.
Number 7. The death of Ryan Stallings. Patricia Stallings brought her sick baby Ryan to the hospital. The doctors found what they thought was ethylene glycol in the baby's blood, leading them to conclude that he had been poisoned. He recovered, but Patricia was suspected of the poisoning, and Ryan was sent to live elsewhere.
And I was devastated. I was blown away. I just could not believe that they could even think. Ryan was my world.
Following a future visit, Ryan fell sick again and died. Patricia was again blamed for poisoning Ryan and charged with homicide.
His mother, Patty, was now charged with first-degree murder and held without bail. She was not allowed to attend Ryan's funeral.
She later gave birth to another son, and he exhibited the same symptoms. It was later found that both children suffered from a disorder called methylmalonic acidemia. An acidic byproduct of the disorder can be mistaken for ethylene glycol.
It would be very simple to confuse the diagnosis of MMA with multiple poisonings because the symptoms are very similar.
Patricia was released from prison and successfully sued the lab that tested Ryan's blood. Number 6. Stonehenge.
The awe-inspiring stone circle is an enduring mystery. Despite centuries of intense scrutiny,
one of humanity's greatest marvels, Stonehenge has been standing for thousands of years.
The widely accepted theory is that the Stonehenge landscape was a large cemetery, a place to bury and worship the dead.
But where exactly did the giant stones come from? They're all pretty much symmetrical, 13 feet high, 7 feet across, and each weighing 25 tons. Experts have been trying to crack the case for hundreds of years. Some will have you believe that it was aliens, but no. It was really just the nearby woods. In 2019, researchers were able to do tests on a small area of extracted stone and sourced it to the nearby Westwoods in Wiltshire. The location has finally been pinned down, but one tantalizing question remains. How did they drag these 25-ton boulders 15 miles to the south?
Clearly some very, very powerful people around at that time who were being able to control resources, control the labour force, to create some of the largest monuments we've ever seen.
Number 5. The Centennial Olympic Park criminal.
The North Carolina mountains, ground zero for the largest, most expensive fugitive search in United States history.
On July 27, 1996, Atlanta's Centennial Olympic Park was bombed during the Summer Olympic Games. The blast injured hundreds, but thanks to the heroic efforts of security guard Richard Jewell, direct deaths were limited to 2 people.
Move away from the tower! Go toward the street, anything but here! Are you kidding me? We gotta move, there's a bomb!
Jewell himself was initially pegged as the culprit, but he was eventually cleared and the case remained a mystery for several years. The FBI was eventually led to a man named Eric Rudolph, who had committed various other bombings across the American South. Rudolph was finally arrested in 2003 and pleaded guilty to all charges. He was given 4 life sentences and is currently held in a supermax prison in Colorado.
He had 1 live bomb and 250 pounds of explosives buried in the mountains here. He agreed to tell the government where it all was in exchange for life sentences.
Number 4. The disappearance of Jamal Khashoggi.
Trump administration touched off a new storm of criticism over the killing of Saudi writer Jamal Khashoggi.
The U.S. has sanctioned some Saudis in response, but the Crown Prince has yet to face any punishment.
The case of journalist Jamal Khashoggi was all over the news in the fall of 2018. On October 2nd of that year, Khashoggi went missing while visiting the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. At the time, Khashoggi was living in exile, as he was penning scathing articles that criticized the Saudi Arabian rulers.
And I think his knowledge of the regime added credibility to his profession as a journalist when he spoke out.
While his fate remained a mystery for weeks, most people had a good idea what happened. Khashoggi was killed inside the consulate. It was eventually revealed that Khashoggi did indeed die inside the building, and on October 25th, Saudi Arabia's Attorney General admitted that it was a premeditated homicide. The CIA later concluded that Khashoggi was assassinated on the orders of Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman.
There was credible evidence that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and other Saudi senior officials were liable for the killing.
Number 3. The Golden State Killer. One of the most notorious criminals in American history, the Golden State Killer has gone by many names. He terrorized California throughout the 70s and 80s, sexually assaulting at least 51 women, burglarizing over 100 homes, and murdering 13 people. He was given different names in different areas, including the Visalia Ransacker and the Night Stalker. Only with time did it become apparent that these crime sprees were the work of one person. The name Golden State Killer was coined in 2013 by crime writer Michelle McNamara. The case helped inspire the creation of California's DNA database. And it was DNA evidence that eventually nabbed Joseph James D'Angelo in 2018, who by then was 72 years old. He was sentenced to life in prison.
I think we all had come to terms that we would never see justice in this case. Neither one of them in any way, shape, or form should have ever died this way.
Number 2. The collapse of the Maya civilization. The largest and most sophisticated pre-Columbian civilization of the Americas, the Maya flourished for thousands of years.
They mastered mathematics and astronomy, perfected the first written language of the Western Hemisphere, and produced stunning works of art.
The civilization entered its so-called classic period in the year 250, and this lasted until 900. It was around then that the entire political system collapsed, and the Maya abandoned their most important cities to move north. With this, the Maya civilization entered what is called its post-classic period. So what the heck happened? It's a mystery that has plagued historians for years. The answer was finally found in the 21st century. It turns out the Maya were so overpopulated that they damaged the environment and created a devastating drought.
The extreme intensity of these droughts was disastrous, making a carefully managed response their only hope.
With their agriculture thoroughly destroyed, the Maya were forced to abandon their most populous cities.
Today, the empty jungles of the Yucatan serve as a reminder that even great civilizations can fail.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. The Vampire Clan. One of the creepiest episodes of Unsolved Mysteries involves Rod Ferrell and his so-called Vampire Clan.
Ferrell and his clan reportedly liked to play vampire at various places around town. One favorite hangout was an abandoned building they called the Vampire Hotel.
In November of 1996, Jennifer Wendorf found her parents beaten to death inside their Florida home. The case went unsolved for weeks, although police immediately suspected Ferrell in the killing, as he was close to the Wendorf's other daughter, Heather. Ferrell was the leader of a Kentucky cult centered around vampirism, and allegedly had prospective members drink his blood in order to join.
That he would cut his arm and let others suck his blood as sort of some kind of ritualistic, they call it being embraced into the family.
The grandmother of a member helped police apprehend the cult, and both Ferrell and a man named Scott Anderson were found responsible for the Wendorf's deaths and given life sentences.
While the couple's daughter Heather was arrested along with Ferrell, Howard Scott Anderson, Dana Cooper, and Charity Kesey, all who were sent to prison. A grand jury believed Heather was unaware of the murder plot and she was not tried.
What do you make of these answers? Let us know in the comments below.
And it has gripped Philadelphia for 65 years.